lesson number 5, or what we've been calling it, Secrets to a Meaningful Life. Lesson number 5. This lesson will deal with adversity, which means, in general, issues and challenges that we face in life. I do have to admit that for some of you that have been coming to many of my courses, some of what I'm going to show here we have discussed in the past, and some of it, not all of it. But nevertheless, it's important and it's good to go over this because these are things that are so significant to dealing with everyday life's challenges. And there are things that can be very painful, and we're not going to try and answer all of life's challenges in one lesson. If we're not also dealing necessarily with someone that's gone through a major tragedy or a serious loss. And we're not going to deal with the question of why do things happen? Why do bad things happen? Rather, we're going to deal with how to, despite all of the explanations, how to deal with the painful experiences and suffering, or just difficulty, just challenges in life that seem to come in all different directions. And sometimes you want to just know that everything is going the way you expect it to, but it doesn't always seem that way. So take a look at page 118. The present lesson will focus on 3 areas of challenge. 1, situational, setbacks such as illness, loss of employment, etc. Social, dealing with difficult people. And 3, personal, internal character and personality flaws. No one can avoid a measure of each of these in life, albeit to varying degrees. So this is what we're going to focus on. And these are going to be things that are sort of everyday life kind of challenges to deal with, and how to take that and be able to work above it. So we're going to start with a story, and this story resonates with me because it's about a snowstorm, and last Friday night I experienced the snow. It wasn't as bad a snowstorm as this one, but I guess if you go to Chicago in February, you could expect snow. So sure enough, I was walking to shul on Shabbos, and there's a beautiful snow coming down. I was saying, if my kids were here, they would say, I wish I was here to see the snow. So it just shows the difference in attitude that we have. But anyway, let's see the story.
The Sheikh Chabad convention in Detroit, Michigan. Let's say 20 ladies went to figure out how many children did we leave at home. Baruch Hashem, I know. It was in February 1979, and Monday morning, the women, took off for the airport because they were planning to travel home.
In Brooklyn, in the shadow of Grand Army Plaza, some parts of Eastern Parkway are plowed up. But as you can see here, other parts of the parkway are not at all plowed. These cars stuck and good.
The neighbors started to get home. There was a terrible snowstorm, so all the ladies are sitting at the airport in Detroit. No planes.
To give you an idea how bad it is and how long it may take for New York City to dig itself out of all of this snow, that tow truck is attached to this city's snowplow.
Miriam Bofax, the head of the Sheikh Chabad out-of-town conventions at the time. Now her daughter, Mrs. Feldman, took over. She went to the telephone, and she called New York. They helped to get home, and here's the snowstorm, and they all began panicking, and they asked my mother to call up 770 and ask the Rebbe for a bracha. They should be able to travel home.
We're going to deal with the response soon. But before we get to the response, let's deal with this. the believer's attitude. And this is based on the Talmud, Tainus 21a, the story of Nachum Ish Gamzu. Nachum Ish Gamzu. Who is this? So, what does Gamzu mean? Gamzu. Do we know Hebrew? Gamzu means also this. Gamzu, also this. Let's see the story. He said, also this. Why? Because he would say, also this. Gamzu Litova. What does Tova mean? Good. Gamzu Litova. So he would say it so much, Gamzu Litova, also this is for good, that he became known as Nachum Ish Gamzu, the man who would say Gamzu all the time. Gamzu Litova. So let's read the story. Why do they call him Nachum Ish Gamzu? Because no matter what would happen to him, he would respond, Gamzu Litova, this too is for the good. Once the Jews wished to send Caesar a gift to gain his favor. They asked themselves, who should we send to present this gift on our behalf? Why don't we send Nachum Ish Gamzu? After all, he regularly experiences miracles and we need one right now. They provided Nachum with a chest filled of jewels and pearls as a gift and sent him on his way. During his journey, he had spent the night in a certain inn. During the night, the folks living in that inn, so tell me this word? Surreptitiously, thank you, removed all the valuables from the chest and refilled it with plain soil. Next morning, Nachum realized what had happened. Unfazed, he trustingly declared, Gamzu Latova, this too is for the good. Nachum arrived at Caesar's palace and dutifully presented his gift. The royal officers opened the chest and saw that it was filled with soil. Caesar roared, the Jews are mocking me, and was about to execute the Jewish emissaries. Unfazed, Nachum Ish Gamzu trustingly declared, Gamzu Latova, this too is for the good. Just then, Eliyahu the prophet appeared before the Caesar in the guise of his trusted minister. He suggested, perhaps it's a special soil from the Jewish patriarch Abraham. When he threw soil in the war against the four kings, it miraculously turned into swords mid-air. When he threw stubble, it turned into arrows. The Romans were then at war with the province that had proven itself indomitable. They took out some of the earth, tested it by throwing it at enemy lines, and rapidly conquered that province as a result. When Caesar realized that the gift of the soil indeed contained miraculous powers, he ordered his servants to enter his treasury and to fill the chest with precious jewels and pearls. He presented the chest to Nachum Ish Gamzu as a token of appreciation and sent him off with great honor. So this is a beautiful story. Now, obviously, this is a story of the Talmud. You could say, well, that happened for him, but what about me? So the idea that everything happens for the good is an important foundation of Jewish thought, and this is a fundamental concept that everything is for the good. And to understand the concept of Gamzu Latova, you have to have two basic fundamentals in theological ideas. And the first one is to believe in the concept of divine providence, which means that divine providence, that everything that happened is with God's providence. That God is there watching, seeing that everything happens. This is a fundamental idea that was taught by the Baal Shem Tov, to believe that everything happens from God. Even from a leaf, you'd say a leaf that falls from the tree is not for no reason, but it could be, gives an example, it could be that leaf was, that there was a ant on the floor that was begging to God, saying that it's too hot, so a leaf falls down and covers it. The example that's given. But the point is that everything happens for a reason, and nothing just happens by chance. That is number one. Number two, which is perhaps as significant, is to believe the divine goodness, which means that God is good and everything he does is good. And this, sometimes people have difficulty with this. How do you explain this? But to truly believe that everything that God does is for the good, and that God is truly involved with everything that happens, even the small minutia of our life, is affected by God's providence. Now, there's all kinds of theological discussions. As I said, why do bad things happen to good people or whatever? And some people say that sometimes God causes people to suffer because of their sins. The idea, but the Hasidic approach, you can find, if you go on the internet and YouTube, and you'll find all kinds of people and all kinds of people, so to speak, referring to themselves as rabbis, and saying that this happened because of this sin and that happened because of this sin. It is true that the Torah does talk about certain things that happen, but nevertheless, the Rebbe's approach is one which is, as we see in text number 2, let's read it together. To be sure, we recognize the Golus, the Jewish people's exile, as a punishment and rectification for failures to live up to our obligation in the past, as indeed we acknowledge in our prayers for our sins were banished from our land. But punishment, according to our Torah called Torah's Emes, a Torah of loving kindness, must also essentially be chesed kindness. So this is the Rebbe's view in this matter, is that while even there are punishments, but nevertheless punishments are good and for our benefit. In other words, the punishment, maybe you want to see it, maybe another way to look at it, not as a punishment, but perhaps a form of a necessary cleansing or situation in order to deal with it. But nevertheless, it is still an aspect of kindness, as opposed to the idea of God punishing with His wrath and with His anger to get back to people that are making trouble. It's like the story they say about the young immigrant. We call him Irving. He arrives and he's living on the Lower East Side. He doesn't have a penny to his name, and he says, and so he has to find a job. So he goes to the local shul, the Lower East Side shul, and he says, "Can I get a job here? Can I do something for you?" The shamash says, "What are you gonna? What are you able to write to spell?" He says, "No." He says, "Can you at least write your name?" He says, "No, I can't even write my name." He says, "Sorry, I don't have a job for you." So he doesn't know. The only thing he knows is working in the shtetl shul. So he schleps a little here, he schleps a little there. He sells a little of this, he sells a little of that, and eventually he starts selling more and more. But he doesn't know anything. He starts accumulating some money, and slowly but surely he starts building up businesses, and he starts building up another business, and he comes to the bank and he wants to borrow something from the bank. He wants to borrow some money from the bank. And he says, I need to borrow $1 million for my business. And the banker says, you have a lot more than $1 million. He says, really, I don't know. I don't even know how to spell my name. I don't even know how to read the bank statements. He says, well, think about it. How much more you would have known if you had an education. How much better you could have done then. He says, if I had an education, I would have been the shamash in the Lower East Side shul. So, there are things that happen that on the surface, they seem like they're sometimes on the surface. But anyway, there's a lot of stories of all different types that we could say. But regardless, sometimes you don't see necessarily how it turns out. But if you have this foundation that everything that happens is for the good, and divine providence, that everything that happens in the world is a direct result of God's providence. And again, not always that it doesn't mean that you'll actually see it or you'll understand it right away, but to have that foundation. The Rebbe's idea here is not, this too is for the good, which is usually explained as make the best out of a bad situation. As the saying goes, when life gives you lemons, what's the rest? Make lemonade. The problem with that is that you're looking at it that life is giving you lemons. So what if life gave you Chardonnay grapes? Then you wouldn't have to make lemonade. The assumption is that there's something bad that life is giving you, and so you have to turn that into lemonade. The saying that goes, the Mandarin word for crisis is a combination of the words for danger and opportunity. So, you know, we're that, you know, in general we see it as there's a bad situation, a negative situation, and we're trying to make the best out of it. But the Rebbe's approach is no. The Rebbe's approach is, this is something good. Gam zu latova means this itself is also good. Meaning, you know, take the story of Nachum Ish Gamzu. The universal view, if you will, was that, what should I do? I'm stuck. I have here dust or dirt. So it can't get worse. So hopefully, maybe something good will come out of it. But the approach was no. This dirt right now is great. This is the best thing that I have. And that dirt turned out to be the greatest gift that the king could have. The king didn't need jewels, he didn't need diamonds. This dirt was more valuable to him than the jewels and the diamonds. But you had to have that attitude to say, this as well is good. This is good. Not something good could come out of it as well. Maybe I'll survive it, and you know, the king won't completely destroy the city. So this is the idea that this was the Rebbe's approach, to see that not that something good could also come out of it. In other words, that the situation is not good, but something good could also come out. But it's that this itself, every single situation is good, and everything that happens is good. So the current reality is in a proper, is a good way. Now let's look at the response that was given to these women who were stuck in the airport by the snowstorm. It wasn't just make the best out of a bad situation. The miracle for them to catch a flight wasn't going to happen. And it wasn't just, well, make the best out of a bad situation. But it's like this. Text number 3. Your response is extremely surprising. I've spoken at length and repeated over and over the Baal Shem Tov's teaching that we should view everything we experience as a guide to our personal service of God. In fact, you have certainly included this very insight in your own speeches. Despite that, when you personally experience something unplanned, you disregard the plainly obvious divine intention for which God orchestrated that event, and you search for utterly bizarre alternative interpretations, such as your concern that God did this to cause you distress, heaven forbid, by thwarting your ability to return home and so on. You have considered everything but the obvious. That is, there is an opportunity to further disseminate knowledge of the Torah and mitzvahs to a greater extent than you already accomplished via the convention. God therefore decided to cause snow to fall from the sky in order to grant you the merit to complete that goal, namely to spread Judaism in an unusually abundant and powerful way, like the usually plentiful and vigorous snowfall in the city, at the airport, via local newspapers, and so on. Let's watch a video again.
These are the words of the Rebbe. Monday of Beishnach, the Baal Shem Tov's teaching that every occurrence contains a directive in serving Hashem is a topic that has been spoken of and discussed at length innumerable times. I am sure that you too have given speeches on this topic. Yet now, when an incident has happened to you, you seek to attach the most distorted possible interpretation. That is absolutely amazing. The simple and obvious reason for the delay is this. It is possible to disseminate Torah and mitzvot to a far greater degree than was accomplished during the convention. You are therefore being granted the merit through the snow which descends from heaven of completing the above task with an extraordinary abundance and intensity of Judaism, similar to the extraordinary abundance of the snowfall. Your efforts in completing the convention's task of disseminating Torah and mitzvos should be extended to the city, the airport, publicity in the newspapers, etc. Women ran around the airport giving out Shabbos candles. Some women went off to the university campus. Some of them set up different booths in shopping malls. Also, Shabbos candles and talking to the women about all the mitzvahs of the Jewish women. After they reported to the Rebbe of everything they had done, this is what the Rebbe answered. It is a particularly great merit when the Almighty points with the finger and clearly shows one what to do from on high. May all your activities undertaken as a result of this divine indication be highly successful. It is obvious that each and every woman will soon travel and reach home, for she will have completed her mission.
So this is obviously a very different approach than, many people would have seen in this situation. I actually noticed something on that video as I'm watching now. The date of that letter was the 22nd of Shvat, which was this was in 1979, and in 1988, the 22nd of Shvat is the day that the Rebbe's wife passed away on that same day, and that also became the standard day for when the Chabad Shluchos convention took place. Just something interesting there, the connection with women in that time. Anyway, so everything comes from God and for a good purpose. And we have to look at every event, even if on the surface it seems to be painful, it seems to be challenging, seems to be difficult, and seemingly a bad situation, and we have to see how it's something that is good. But more than asking what's good, ask what is the purpose. If you ask what is the purpose, or what can I take from this at this moment, then that actually helps to ease the discomfort of what's happening. To say, how can I make something of this that will be meaningful and purposeful? So he saw the Hasidim stranded in the airport because of snow falling, while some saw it as a curse that they can't get home. He said, this is God pointing a finger to you and saying, you have a special mission, you have a special opportunity, a special job here. And so he was trying to reframe the whole situation, and to say that unusually strong snowstorm that paralyzed the region is one that is for you to be able to do something special and significant at this time, to influence more people with the light of Torah, mitzvahs, or whatever the situation demands. So the Rebbe is expressing his surprise that people in this predicament didn't actually see that and notice that. When he says, we've been talking about it so much, but when something happens to you, so it's suddenly we don't feel that way. We don't feel that that's what's actually happening. So he's saying, how can you fail to realize, especially a gathering which is of Hasidic women, to see that situation. In the fall of 1977, Hasidim gathered in the Rebbe synagogue in 770 to celebrate Shmini Atzeres. Some of you will have the opportunity to visit 770 in May. And Shmini Atzeres is a particularly joyous time. As we saw on October 7th, Shmini Atzeres tragedy that happened as well. In the Chabad Hasidic circles, they had their own version, if you will, of a Shmini Atzeres tragedy. And that was that during the Hakafot, which could sometimes take hours, but during the Hakafot, which is an extremely joyous time, celebrating, dancing, singing, extremely joyous time. The shul is always packed. People come from all over the world for the special opportunity to spend Simchas Torah with the Rebbe. And that there was this particular Simchas Torah where suddenly in the middle of the Hakafot and the singing and dancing, the Rebbe asked for a chair and became very, very pale. And it was very clear he never would ask for a chair in the middle of Hakafot time when he's be up, singing, dancing, celebrating, and suddenly he asked for a chair, he needs to sit down. It wasn't just that he was a little tired from his old age, it was clearly that something's going on. So they immediately cleared out the shul and they called in some doctors, and it was clear that the Rebbe had suffered a major heart attack that night. There were several cardiologists that came, and they ended up setting up a makeshift hospital, a field hospital in 770. The Rebbe refused to go to the hospital, which is a story on its own right, but the doctors did not want to treat him if he wasn't in the hospital. Finally, they got a doctor, Dr. Weiss, who came from Chicago, and he treated him. But anyway, so the Chabad community was in turmoil. Here they have the Rebbe leading the Simchas Torah, the Hakafot, the singing, dancing, everything was directed and led by the Rebbe, the Simchas Torah. Now they're at a loss. Well, what are we going to do? They weren't only at a loss. It was obviously, this joyous day turned to such a sad, tragic day. And the Rebbe came down with a message. Well, he didn't come down. He sent down a message from his room. He told his secretary, Rabbi Leibel Groner, to share the following message. He said that he was having a conversation with one of the doctors who was feeling void and empty. And he says he was taking his blood. So he said like this, he said, "I'm taking the blood, so what is it that causes the blood to come out? Is it the needle that's going in? Or is it the vacuum?" So what's the answer? Where's the doctors? Where's the nurses? It's the vacuum, right? It's the vacuum that's causing the blood to come in. That you're able to take out the blood because of the vacuum. So he said that this as well is a lesson for life. That it's the vacuum that allows you to fill up it's that emptiness that allows you to fill up and to bring in that life, to bring in the blood, to bring in the life. And so you could fill, and so when you have something empty, that's actually a vessel for things that are good and holy. And this was a message he was saying to the doctor as well. You feel empty, that's actually a good sign. That means that you are now a vessel to be able to take in so much more. And the message he was sending to the Hasidim is, you feel a vacuum, you feel empty, you feel there's an emptiness, you feel that the Rebbe is not there, he's not there leading you, guiding you, he's not there participating in the celebrations, you feel that vacuum. He says, but that has to be a focus for more joy and more spiritual energy. I use this idea as well, October 7th, hearing the terrible news that it comes Simchas Torah and you still have to be joyous. Even though it's a very, you can't take away the tremendous sadness of that situation, but, still, the day of Simchas Torah is still a day of Simchas Torah. And it's that joy that helps to overcome it. So, text number 4a. So let me go to this. So this was the vacuum of the syringe draws out blood. So he's saying the Rebbe's absence of Simchas Torah would draw forth more intense joy. And thankfully he overcame it. He healed and became even stronger than ever. Rabbi Yochanan taught, why are the Jewish people compared to an olive? To inform us that just as an olive provides its oil only through being pressed and crushed, so does the Jewish nation return to the good path only through the suffering that they experience. The process of extracting olive oil is described in the Torah as crushed for the luminary. Specifically in the era of exile, when everyone is broken and crushed, we're able to reach our inner luminary. So it's the crushedness, it's those difficulties, those tragedies that sometimes bring out the best. Again, we're not entering why does things happen, but nevertheless, to be able to find the good in that situation. And I think, going back to the October 7th, something happened to the Jewish people that almost, it's inexplicable. That it comes a time when there's crushing, not only physically what happened in Israel, but, take throughout the world. The anti-Semitism that suddenly blew up. And you have this abnormal response, which is, I'm going to be more proud to be a Jew. I won't be afraid to wear my Star of David, and I want to have a mezuzah in my home, and I want to have, I'm going to wear that chain for the hostages, and I don't care what anyone says. And what's happening in Israel, soldiers who never put on a pair of tefillin in their life, and suddenly are putting it on, and women who never lit a Shabbos candle suddenly doing it, and it doesn't really make sense. But somehow it's this crushing that brings out the inner spirit. So this is the hidden power. Adverse experiences unlock access to inner strength that we may have not known about. So looking at that story with the Hasidim who were stranded in Detroit, it's not merely saying to see the snowstorm as a challenge that would strengthen them and bring out their spiritual, it's not only saying to be able to overcome, but saying that the challenge is one that can bring out their inner spiritual reserves. The challenge is something that could actually bring out the best in what you have. And that's why he was saying, you have to see this event as positive. As this is actually affording you additional opportunities to do things that you otherwise would not have done. And so there is something that's actually positive here. Going back to the story of Nachum Ish Gamzu, the catastrophe that he saw was all for the good. Let's see text number 5. We talked about this outside before. At no point did Nachum Ish Gamzu suffer any harm. On the contrary, he had delivered the original gift of gems to the Caesar. There was no guarantee that the Caesar would have received the gift graciously, for the Caesar had no shortage of his own precious gems. By contrast, his gift of soil wound up being received very graciously indeed. So there's challenges and setbacks, there's pain, but we comfort ourselves by saying that there's the blessings there in the challenges and setbacks that we're able to actually bring out the true goodness that really exists. So this is when it comes to situational challenges, you have to see them as opportunities. And by the way, I'm not saying that this is easy. Something you have to work on. Something that you have to, constantly strive to see situations in a different light. Where we live in a world that's, especially with, the media and everything, it's constantly trying to throw negativity at us. And you have to be able to constantly find the positive in every situation. It's like constant mind and heart emotional exercises you have to keep working on. Not just when some tragedy strikes, but at everything. Everything. People tend to find the negative, the black dot on the white paper. And we have to constantly be exercising our mind to always look for the positive in everything. And that changes when situations happen, to be able to see it in a positive way as well. Yeah.
We have a phrase for that in English. It's called a blessing in disguise.
Right. Yeah, blessing in disguise. But we have to work on trying to find that, because we live in a world that's constantly trying to throw all the stuff at us to scare us, to try and put us into hiding, and to be able to always see the positive. And we're going to talk more about this. There's another one which is, I think, also very, very relevant, especially in today's situation, which is, so we talked about situational, right? So situational things that happen in life, to be able to find the positive, to be able to work above it, etc. Then there's another thing, which is when it comes to individuals, to people. And this is something that is becoming more and more common, especially with the polarizing world that we live in. And there seem to be a lot of difficult people to deal with. Yeah, you're shaking your head. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, right? Be it someone in shul, be it a Facebook arguer, be it someone that you meet occasionally. There's some people that are difficult people, and so we're going to try and change the attitude a little bit and see how the Rebbe's approaches. So we're going to look first at two stories here, two personal encounters, and not really stories, two personal encounters. One is with Ron Nachman, an Israeli political leader, and the other was Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau, who was the chief rabbi of Israel. Let's see. Gesundheit. Why is this not playing? There we go.
ואחרון חביב, אם מותר לי לבקש בשביל עצמי פעם משהו. יש הרבה אנשים שרוצים אותי. בגלל זה שאני מצליח לעשות את כל הדברים האלה. ועושים לי כל מיני בעיות. בנושא של חקירות ומשטרות, איך אני מביא כסף מאמריקה, ואיך אני עושה את כל הדברים. הייתי מבקש שהרב ייתן לי ברכה, שכל הדברים האלו שעושים נגדי, לא יעלה בעיני אף אחד, ושאני אצא מכל הדברים האלה חזק ומחוזק. להיות בבית על המחשבת של איש אחר, זהו יהיה קצת, שהקודש ברוך עשי יוצא התחיל לחלחי, בכל לכת לאחת כבני ישראל. אבל מה שהצדוק מבקש, שהתחיל מזה כל העדיף, ואבלה בזה יהי לבית יותר, את הפשוטה יותר, כסרט של יהודים, ואין שמישהו להתמגד, עדיין מתקבל אצלם כרצון, מעצות דווקא ככלל.
Mir haben Mittwoch der Busse של erste Wohl המקווה, הפשיטה של חב"ד עם תל אביב, ובכל העודה בבוא, והפיקה פריז לפוך לכל פרטופלה, ונשיקה להערכת הישבש, ושנתקבל על זה כל פרנסת אוכלוסיות.
Und welches dann bedingt, die geht nach Stadt, da kommt man zu Israel, jeden Mathematikier. Und wenn das dann haben wir, wenn man dort vergeht, schaut es dann hier, und man noch ein bisschen, wir sind auch mal für das im Klub.
Und sie werden es auch hier
Aber ich habe Backen Beratung gelernt, weil ich was mit der Mitte. Und wenn das überlebt, dann sind wir noch stärker. Und dann zurückgehen auf Lochland.
Okay, so those two stories, let's just reflect on them for a moment. So the first one was some sort of political leader where he was having a lot of adversaries coming out. And so the response to Rebbe said was, you can't control what other people think, but you have to be able to see in yourself, to know what you're doing is right and to become even stronger. The second one, perhaps I should have given a little bit of an introduction there to what he is talking about. So they were building a mikvah. We'd love to build a mikvah here too. But there is a Chabad version of a mikvah. Can't get into all the details, but the Chabad version is made a little bit differently than the way others make it. And Rabbi Lau, is not a Chabad rabbi. He's a Ashkenazi rabbi. But he understood the significance of the Chabad way of making the mikvah, and he was standing there. The one standing next to him was the Chabad, the head Chabad rabbi of Tel Aviv, Rabbi Garlitsky. So he was standing next to him, and so he said, we were able to arrange to have this Chabad mikveh, and he said there was a lot of opposition to it. So the Rebbe's response was actually a halachic concept, which is that if there is a document which has whatever sort of challenge against it, and it's brought to a court, and the court reinstates that document, that it's a good document, so that's even stronger than if it was just a standalone document. Now I don't know about the American law, maybe David could tell us about that, but in Jewish law, if there is a document that stands up to the opposition in court, so it's actually considered a stronger, more valid document. And so that's what he was saying, the Rebbe was saying, that the fact that there's opposition and you're able to withstand that opposition, that shows that it's even stronger and better. So you see, that's like the verified version, right? You could have something that's a version, and you have a verified version. Verify and trust. So that's even stronger that way. The next video is one which I was deciding if I should show or not, but I decided I'm going to show it. It's about someone that you may have your own views on him, and it really doesn't matter. It's about Alan Dershowitz. But the reason that I wanted to show this, because I actually have a personal connection to the story. It has to do with my family. First I'm going to show you the story, and then I'm going to show you my family connection to this. It's about Alan Dershowitz talking about Senator Jesse Helms. Remember Jesse Helms? Okay, let's see what he says about him.
I remember I had the chutzpah once to write him a letter, saying, Rebbe, how come for your 80th birthday you decided among those you wanted to honor was Senator Jesse Helms? At the time, Senator Jesse Helms could, I think, be fairly described as a Sonei Israel. He was not a friend of the Jewish people. He was not a friend of Israel. So, in my naivete, I wrote the Rebbe a letter. He wrote me back one of the most beautiful responses. He said, you honor not only to influence the past, but to influence the future. He said, watch Senator Jesse Helms over the next years and see whether or not our decision was the correct one. Within a year of that honor, Jesse Helms had become one of the strongest supporters of Israel in the United States Senate. And as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, one of its most important. You live and you learn. And I learned a great deal.
So this story, as opposed to the first two stories was how we can become stronger regardless of what other people think. This is saying how we actually could have a positive influence on others by having the right approach. Now, what he didn't say in that is that in that story, for the Rebbe's 80th birthday, one of those that was involved was a great uncle of mine named Senator Chick Hecht, was senator to Nevada. And he is one of the main people that actually had an influence on Senator Jesse Helms. Oops, sorry about that. And what happened was, just click this. This is from Jesse Helms' website. This is jessehelms.org/Israel. And what happened was that Jesse Helms, my great uncle, I'll show you a picture of him here, he took Jesse Helms for a trip to Israel. This is in 1985. And after that trip, he completely changed his view. So this individual, it's not coming up on here, sorry. Let me. Why is it not coming up? here. So, this individual is my great uncle. His name is Senator Chick Tutt. He was a senator at the time. That's Jesse Helms. These are two Chabad rabbis in Kfar Chabad, Israel, during their trip. And this is him getting a tour. Again, you see my great uncle sitting on the side there. And that's my grandfather. This is my grandmother. May she live and be well. And this is his trip to Israel. It says Tzirei Chabad, Kfar Chabad, the students of Chabad. And so it was after this trip where he completely changed his view on Israel, and he completely changed his view in general about the Jewish people. And so that's the idea of being able to have a positive influence. Here he wrote, it's interesting that he wrote, we should never pursue any plan that envisions a separation of the West Bank from Israel. Jesse Helms wrote that. So, an undivided Jerusalem is the undisputable basis of a Solomonic solution for the problem which faces us in the Middle East. Recognize Jerusalem in the context I have described. So, obviously he changed. But the point here is not to go through the details of that particular story, but to show how we are able to have a positive influence if we just, allow ourselves to work with people and not become overwhelmed by what they are presenting. So, when dealing with a challenging person, again, it's the same concept overall, which is this too is for the good. We can focus on negativity of a challenging person. You could say how bad the person is, or you could try and find potential for good and accomplish more together. One example of this, Rabbi Shmuel Lu, the Chabad community leader who lives in London, he had a similar story. There's a prominent British Jewish leader who expressed opposition to one of the Rebbe's campaigns. And Rabbi Lu wanted to get a delegation together to go and discuss with him and try and convince him. And this is also a good lesson of how to deal with such situations. And he wanted to convince him about how the Rebbe was right with this particular campaign. The Rebbe said, no, that's not the right approach. He said, it's 613 mitzvahs. So this particular mitzvah, he doesn't agree with me. Fine. There's 612 other ones. Let's work with those together. We always tend to try and force our opinion and our view on the other ones where they disagree. Say, okay, we disagree. Let's try and focus where we could work together. So this is the next thing we talked about, being above adversity, situational, and also when it comes to social. The Rebbe teaches to find and connect with the potential in challenging people. Okay, any questions so far? And then comes the third one. This is perhaps the most difficult of all. And that is internal challenges. Because when it's coming from the outside, you can use all types of things to be able to work with overcoming adversity. But when it comes from the inside, dealing with internal flaws, internal struggles, internal shortcomings, then already it's me. If it's me, it's harder to deal with that. But if we take the same approach, the same concept that we talked about outside challenges, and to deal with my internal challenges, then it could actually be the very same thing. Use the same rules, and this will shed light on negative character traits. So the first one is that, again, as we said before, to know that God is the ultimate source of good. And part of recognizing that God is the ultimate source of good is seeing that God made me as well. And He made me good. There are others that the first focus on the individual is bad. Right, David? That the basis is bad. And now I gotta do something to overcome that. No, the Rebbe is saying the Jewish view is, if you believe God is good, God made me good too. Now I gotta know how to bring out the good that I actually already have.
It's even worse, by the way. They can't overcome it.
They can overcome it, right. He's referencing other religions, but so the Jewish thought that drives the desires, the lusts in a person's psyche is that, what do you have? You have a Yetzer Hara. Right? The Yetzer Hara is the evil inclination that's pulling a person away from adhering to the Torah's ways. So everybody has their version of Yetzer Hara, whatever that inner struggle, that inner challenge that's telling you that you can't overcome it. We're going to read an interesting story from the Talmud in Sukkah 52a. Abaye, one of the sages in the Talmud, overheard a man suggest to a woman, "Let's go up early in the morning and travel together." When she agreed, Abaye told himself, "I'd better follow them to prevent them from doing something forbidden together." He shouted them for a distance for 3 parsang, approximately 12 miles, or whatever it is, maybe, probably a little less. He trudged through a reef-filled marsh while they walked along the road and decided, however, they did not use the isolation in the early hour as an opportunity to stand together. As they parted ways, Abaye heard them commenting, "The road was quite a run, but the company was certainly fun." Abaye then told himself, "If I were that man, I wouldn't have managed to restrain myself from sinning with her." As he stood in thought, slouched against the doorpost and feeling distressed, a certain elder approached him and said, "A greater person has a greater inclination to sin." This is an interesting story because you have here like 3 different levels of internal struggles, if you will. The first one is what Abaye assumed the other individuals had. The second one was how Abaye felt within himself, and the third one was how the older individual, whoever it was, reframed the story to him. And so he heard this place, right? And he assumed about them right away that it's going to bring to sin. And they didn't. And then he felt bad about himself, saying, "I can't believe that I misjudged them. And I also feel bad about myself that I don't think I would have been able to contain that." And then the other one comes and reframes it. And, we all have these type of situations. And he says the greater the person, the greater the Yetzer Hara. So he says that the fact that you say you couldn't have controlled yourself, that's because you're a greater person and you have a greater inclination. Maybe this person just didn't have that inclination. Sometimes we feel this way. Am I a good parent? Am I a good Jew? Am I doing something wrong with my colleagues, with my friends? We feel there's feelings of inadequacy. And so he's saying the fact that you feel that way actually means that you're stronger, that you're better than you think you are. Because the greater you think, the greater you are, the greater the internal challenge that you have. So the teaching has been interpreted in many commentators throughout the years. One of the most popular ones, the idea that great holiness is exceptionally attractive to the forces of unholiness. So when there's a person who is on a very high level, he becomes the focus of intent effort of the Yetzer Hara to undermine him. So when a person has great spiritual powers, he becomes greatly challenged. Now, in a talk that the Rebbe gave on this, he was bringing out how the greater Yetzer Hara, it's not only that the fact that a person has it is because he's a greater person. In other words, when you're reading it on the surface, what it's saying is you're a much greater person, so therefore you have a greater challenge. And the Yetzer Hara maybe works harder on a greater person. But the Rebbe took it a step further and said, the greater the challenge, the greater we become. Because the more we're able to handle those challenges that come our way. And so, what something may seem to be a pointless burden, he's saying that actually that is the source of you becoming greater. He gave us an interesting analogy. Like a rocket. Now we're able to watch rocket launches. Anybody watch rocket launches? Yeah. You always have to check on the NASA YouTube or whatever to see when is the next launch going to be, and then we go outside and it says 1 minute left, T-minus 1 minute. Then you go out and they say that they just scratched it. And you say, okay, I have to wait for the next time. But anyway, it is pretty cool to be able to see rocket launches right from the comfort of our home. Something that 99.9% of the world doesn't get to see. But anyway, what do we see in a rocket? So in a rocket, this is a pretty poor image of a rocket, but wait, let me go back for a second. This is the rocket. All the rest of it is fuel. So think about that for a second. About 85% of that rocket is fuel to do what? To move it up. So basically what you're doing is you're overburdening yourself in order to be able to go up. Seemingly doesn't make sense. I'm adding more weight to myself so that I could go up higher. I would think that I need to loosen up to go higher. So this is there, now you can watch it go take off. So what's the idea of the rocket? That you're adding a tremendous amount of fuel, even though that's actually overburdening the rocket, but that is actually what's propelling it to go up. So the same thing is, those burdens, those internal burdens that we feel, is actually what's helping propel us to become a greater person. So the baggage that we're loading with propels us to greater heights. Let's take a look at text number 7. In order that the good inclination should be able to soar even higher, there is a need for a tremendous quantity of material, the inclination for evil that stands in opposition. The more this quantity is increased, meaning the more powerful one's inclination for evil, so will the ascent caused by overcoming it be all the higher. So what he's saying over here is that the more the challenge is, the more of a greater person you become. There's a letter, which is in the next text, a letter of a person that was going through a particular challenge, a struggle, temptation. And the Rebbe is urging the person with this battle to remain faithful to the Torah teachings. Really, it doesn't matter what the issue was, but I'll just tell you for discussion's sake, because really it's about any challenge that the person has. This particular challenge, he was dealing with homosexuality. So if you think that the Rebbe didn't deal with that, he dealt with that as well. And what he says to him is like this: no human being can answer such questions. In other words, why he was given this challenge, which only Hashem the Creator can answer. One observation that can be suggested in relation to the question, why me? If an individual experiences a particularly difficult or trying situation, it may be assumed that God has given him extraordinary powers to overcome the extraordinary difficulty. The individual concerned is probably unaware of his real inner strength. The trial may therefore be designed for the sole purpose of bringing out the individual his hidden strength, which after overcoming his problem can be added henceforth to the arsenal of his revealed capacities, in order to utilize both for infinitely greater achievements for the benefit of himself and other. And so what he's saying is the challenge is actually a great gift. Without it, a person who has immense potential for greatness might ignore his potential and never actually realize it. And so that's why the fact that he has this challenge actually means that you have the ability to overcome it. And you have to be able to discover a way to harness those flaws within oneself to use it out in the best way. Let's take a look at a story here. 2 stories presented in this video where the Rebbe is going to deal with 2 individuals, and these individuals have certain internal challenges, and the challenges that they're faced, and they present the Rebbe with the challenge. The Rebbe is going to tell them, turn it around and use that challenge to be able to overcome within yourself. A fascinating idea. Let's see. And we have a challenge that's not playing. I don't know why.
I came to Crown Heights to try out Yiddishkeit, to go into yeshiva. I wanted to see if I wanted to be religious. I ended up staying there for 4 years or more. In those years, I requested from Rebbe a tikkun. I wasn't happy with some of the things, the way I behaved in the past. Okay. The Rebbe said, use it as a lever against itself. For example, if you are such an egoist, if you see someone else learning better than you, say to yourself, I can certainly learn better than that. And then go and do it. And when the Yetzer Hara sees what it's being used for, he'll stop bothering me. Okay, that's the end of the yeshivas.
Is das mit der Erzählung ist das Verstande, a jeder Linie, was tut sich in der Lebenswelt, was Helga der Weg und Menschkeit aller Bord, ist eine sichere Sache, wenn du sei behaupten tätig, muss mehr nicht wie toll an den Menschen, als selber sich in Beruf nicht wenig sein. Es hat viele, wenn der täglich behaupten, ist eine sichere Sache, als es am Ende finden.
He was saying to me, you have to realize that God is good, and everything that you experience in this world during your life, even your own inner negative character traits or whatever, it's all from God, and it all is nothing more than an opportunity.
Belele Ebers mehr mit Dolly Bay, soll suchen, gedorrt, welche sicher gefühlen, bis in ein Leben von mir, als der mit werden wichtig, als der Tee ist so echt in der Linie.
When I was studying in Montreal, I was having a great difficulty with my study partner, with Rachel Russo. We would be incoherent to each other. We would study the Talmud, the Gemara, whatever he would say, I would say differently, whatever I would say, he would say differently. And I went to the but I thought there was something wrong with me, but just arguing with him all the time. And the Rebbe said, it would appear that one of your latent gifts is skillful, the ability of analyzing and arguing and coming to certain conclusions, not simply straightforward. That it was that you should spend time in working at skillful.
Is a sichere Sache, bechol Ihnen und Ihnen ist dort tätig und geloschen durch, was dort in Jerusalem, als ihm berechnet ist, dass Rumi Kern, ist vermerkt mit dem Tee, oder gefunden ist, dass Rumi Kern, berechnet Rumi Kern, in den Schiebelose, was nicht gesucht, Rumi darf suchen, oder die darf suchen.
You know, you could have taken a situation which, well, to me it was quite destructive and quite negative, and it had some tremendous power and tremendous opportunity and tremendous potential in terms of developing a certain level of study.
You know, think about it. These are teenage students, teenage yeshiva students, and the challenges that they're going through, and you know the responses that the Rebbe is telling them of how to find it out and to bring out the best within them. Just think about if we have teachers like that today that would be responding to the challenges of what teenagers are going through. There would probably be a lot less teenage suicides than what there are. Let's just say that, right? But anyway, so this is when it comes to internal. The Rebbe teaches us to harness our flaws for greater positive achievements, which is again just a fascinating concept and so revolutionary to be able to see things in this way, that everything is good, including myself, and to be able to use it in the best way possible. The Talmud tells us a story about Rabbi Akiva. The first century, the Roman legions, they destroyed Jerusalem, they burned the Beis HaMikdash to the ground, and obviously it devastated the Jewish people. Our homeland was destroyed, Jerusalem was destroyed, and you can imagine what it felt like to live in those days. And so the sages of the time were walking together with Rabbi Akiva. And the Talmud tells us like this, text number 9. 4 leading sages, Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Yeshua, and Akiva were traveling together. They ascended to Jerusalem, and when they arrived at Mount Scopus and saw the site of the destroyed temple, by the way, Mount Scopus today is where the university, Hebrew University is located. And on it, that's where you can see an amazing view of the Temple Mount from there. And on there is the Hech Synagogue, which is a synagogue that my grandparents had built, and literally looks right down onto the Temple Mount. It's incredible. Anyway, so they went to Mount Scopus, and they rendered their garment in mourning. When they arrived at the Temple Mount, they saw a fox emerging from the side of the Holy of Holies. Sages began to weep, except for Rabbi Akiva, who began to laugh. Why are you laughing? They questioned him. Why are you weeping? He rejoined. This is the location regarding which the Torah warns. Any non-priest who approaches will die in God's hands. They retorted, but now foxes stroll through it without consequence. Should we not weep? Rabbi Akiva explained, that's why I'm laughing. Uriah prophesied regarding the Jerusalem's destruction, warning that because you, Zion, will be plowed like a field. But Zechariah prophesied that in the Messianic future there will yet be an elderly man, elderly woman sitting in the streets of Jerusalem. Now until the Uriah's prophecy of destruction was fulfilled, I was afraid that Zechariah's prophecy would not be fulfilled. But now that Uriah's vision has become reality, it's clear that the Messianic vision of Zechariah will become reality. Sage responded, these are their exact words. Akiva, you have comforted us. Akiva, you have comforted us. So, what was this conversation here? They saw the devastation of the Jewish people, and they grappled with how to process this pain. And Rabbi Akiva wasn't ignoring the fact that there was a great tragedy that happened. He recognized there's a tragedy that happened, and there was a crushing blow to the people, and they suffered tremendously. And We've been for 2,000 years in exile, and every terrible event that happened since then. But he's saying that there is an aspect of the hidden good that's here. And the sages said God's home and the Jewish people are in ruins. And they said Uriah's prophecy has been fulfilled. Foxes roam in the Temple Mount as a symbol of the nation's tragedy. Rabbi Akiva said he just had a different perspective. It's not that he saw something different. He saw the same thing they did. His perspective was different. God's home and the Jewish people were in ruins. He didn't see something different. But he says Zechariah's prophecy will be fulfilled. He wasn't only looking at the destruction. He was looking at the rebuilding. Am I blocking here? Foxes roam the Temple Mount as a confirmation that a good future awaits. So, again, he saw the same thing. It wasn't that he didn't recognize that there was something destructive here. But his response, his version of the story was different. Isaiah says, on that day you will exclaim, I thank you, God, because you were furious with me. Your anger receded and you comforted me. Odcha Hashem ki anafta bi. And the Rebbe has a letter on this regarding the redemption. When Mashiach comes, we're going to see the purpose. Let us see from the day I began attending Cheder, he writes, primary school, and even earlier, they began to take shape in my imagination the image of a future redemption. The redemption of the Jewish nation from its final exile. I envisioned a redemptive state so great that it would make the suffering, decrees, and massacres of exile comprehensible. The experience will be such that, with a full heart and with complete understanding, we will exclaim on that day, I thank you, God, because you are furious with me, quoting the prophet Isaiah. The Rebbe lived through very, very challenging times. He lived through Ukrainian massacres in 1919. His father was tortured to death by the Stalinists. His brother-in-law and sister-in-law were murdered by the Nazis. He barely escaped the Nazis in France. But to the Rebbe, every kind of suffering himself and that which came across his desk, which he saw thousands and thousands of letters of pain and suffering, he said there has to be some sort of good that's there. There has to be something that you'll be able to find how to grow, become stronger, to be able to find the positive from it. There's some sort of hidden opportunity there. Doesn't mean that the tragedy doesn't exist, but to be able to see how there's something good that can come out of here. And sometimes it's easy to find the blessings falling from the sky, sometimes it's not. But if you have this notion, if you have this view in life, if you have this approach that everything is good, everything will be good, then whatever happens will indeed be good. So the Rebbe encountered every kind of suffering and always responded with unshakable conviction in God's goodness.
Lesson 5. Above adversity. 1. Jewish theology teaches that A. Everything that happens is directly orchestrated by God, and B. All that God does is for the good. Taken together, these principles inform us that everything that happens is for the good. 2. The Rebbe did not merely guide individuals facing challenges to make the best of the negative situation. Rather, he guided them to view the challenge itself as a positive opportunity. 3. When we encounter difficult situations, we should accept them as positive opportunities to help us reveal hidden powers we did not realize we possessed. We can also look for hidden blessings within the actual situation. 4. When we face interpersonal difficulties, we should look for the good elements of the other person and try to use them as springboards toward a positive relationship. 5. Our internal struggles are intended to serve as fuel for personal growth, and what appear to be flaws can be utilized in positive and constructive ways.
Next week we're going to talk about spiritual heights and see how to set incredible goals and realize your most profound potential. while keeping both feet on the ground. So it's going to be a little bit more spiritual, if you will, but nevertheless making it in a practical sense. One more quick video.
Nowadays, people don't really get lost anymore. For the most part,